There's always been this kind of push and pull where I've like actually really liked the feeling of being scared and kind of thrived off of that kind of fear and the pressure.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to Midnight Chats. It is, I'm sad to say, the final one of this series. Stuart and I have loved bringing you 10 new podcasts during the autumn. And I just want to take a moment to quickly thank again all of our guests on this run. That's been Idols, Tim Burgess, Phoebe Bridgers, the now multi-Grammy nominated Phoebe Bridgers, I should add. Congratulations to her. Matt Berninger from The National, Ezra Collectives, Femi Colioso, Big Pig, Arlo Parks, Perfume Genius. Plus, we had the one and only Jarvis Cocker chat to us for our monumental 100th episode. Wherever you're listening to this, all those chats are there. Do catch up on any you've missed and complete the set. And let us know which your favourites have been. We love hearing from you. Find us at Loud and Quiet Mag on social media. We've had more people listening than ever before, so big thank you to you for streaming the podcast every time we put a new one out. You can directly help what we do and support the making of another series of the podcast. There is a link to our supporters page in the show notes of this podcast. So if you do want to buy us the equivalent of a pint at this year's non-existent Christmas parties, do feel free. It all helps and it is very much appreciated. Fingers crossed we will be back with more episodes in the new year. On with tonight's episode then. It is a huge pleasure to welcome Romy Madley Croft from the XX onto the podcast. We've been fans of that band for a long time, since they played a club night for Loud and Quiet magazine many years ago. Of course, they're now not just headlining festivals but putting on their own. New music from them, I'm sure, is not too far away, but I was chatting to Romy as she recently released some music under her own name for the first time. The single Lifetime is a big dancefloor tune. Do go and check it out if you haven't heard it already. And my understanding is there's an album's worth of songs that she's still working on, probably due for release in 2021. Romy might only be releasing her own stuff now, but she has been writing music outside of the band for a while for other artists like previous podcast guests Mark Ronson and Jenny Beth. She also won a Grammy for her work with Dua Lipa. That's all been happening in the background the past few years. So part of our conversation is about her new solo music, which sounds like it's been a really liberating experience to work on in a number of ways. But there's also some stories about her first visits to Ibiza, playing football for her local team Whippets FC, and the joy of recently seeing players that she admires like Megan Rapinoe and Marcus Rashford bring about really impactful societal change. What else can I tell you? This was recorded at the beginning of November, a couple of days after the US election and the first day of the second UK national lockdown. And I think that's it. I think that's everything you need to know. So let's get into the chat. I'm delighted to bring you Romy on Midnight Chats episode 103. I feel like this has been quite a week for everybody, sort of with the US election, and today is the first day of the second lockdown in the UK. So how are you doing? How are you feeling? How's your week been?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm okay. It has definitely been quite a week so far. I feel a little bit overwhelmed, as I'm sure everyone does. I'm just sort of, I guess, learning to take each day as it comes at the moment, and it definitely forces you just to be literally in the moment, because you can't, I guess we've all gotten a bit more used to doing future plans and thinking, I can do this in 2 months or whatever, but now we just have to be like, I don't know, I just have to see what I'm doing today. There's something about slowing down that has been kind of, taking some getting used to, but is, there's something beautiful in that as well, kind of, still.
Yeah, it's like these two polar opposites, isn't it? I think we all learned during the first one to, like you say, slow down a little bit, like maybe sort of get back to basics with the things that you sort of, the time that you spend doing things and the things that you enjoy. But also there is that flip side of it being it is stressful, and it does bring on like anxiety, not being able to do the normal things you do. And so I don't know how I feel about going into this sort of second one, a bit like I sort of know what the deal is, and so it's maybe a little bit less scary. But I'm also still scared about doing another lockdown haircut, because
definitely
that didn't go well for me first time.
Oh,
out.
really? I just wanted to say, oh yeah, same. I just wanted to say my cat's just come and sat right next to me, and so you might hear some very loud purring. If you're wondering what that sound is, she's
What's your cat called?
She's called Zola.
Zola, awesome.
Yeah, but she's likes to get quite up close and personal. So if you hear purring,
I can hear Zola on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
how was because I think you've got a dog as well, haven't you?
Yes, I do.
It's cool. So what's having the cat and the dog through the first lockdown was like? I mean, people talked a bit about just making sure they had like their pets and stuff to make sure they were going out and getting fresh air, and just the comfort of having them there. Was that a big help?
Oh, it was super nice. I think I think having animals around, it was a lovely thing. And I mean, it's a lovely thing anyway, but I think just being just solely in the house and just kind of, it felt like, like I live with my girlfriend, and it's like, it actually felt like there was 4 of us here because with the animals. And someone said to me today, actually, they were like, oh, it's just nice having animals around, it's more beating hearts. And I was like, that's actually very sweet thing to say.
Yeah, that is really sweet.
And it was lovely. And obviously being able to get out, and our dog is called Mouse, and she is she's very big. She's much bigger than a mouse, but she is it was just a real joy to be able to get out and sort of have walking her as like a real like focus point of the day. And I think normally with work and with kind of busy schedules and stuff, like having a dog is such a joy, but a lot of the time thinking, okay, who can have Mouse if both of us are working, and always feeling a little bit of a juggling act. And then it was just so nice to be able to have that time and just be able to just enjoy being with her and enjoy just slowing down.
Mouse and Zola are going to hate it when you go back to work. Like,
I know.
When you're off on tour for like 6 months at a time again.
Oh, I think I'm going to I'm going to miss them so much as well. I know it does seem like a sort of distant thought, but I really hope that touring and everything can happen. I feel very, very grateful for the touring I've done at this point, like more than ever. I was already grateful for the places I've seen, but it does seem slightly abstract at this time. But I'm hopeful for more.
Have you thought about that a lot? Has that been something that you've really missed, or is it a bit of a mixture? Is that enforced break been a nice thing as well to sort of I imagine like touring occasionally can feel like a little bit of a slog when you're doing like big tours, so like just having that enforced break, has that been nice in any way?
It has been. No, it's been really good to slow down, but I think I spent pretty much my entire 20s, I'm 31 now, but our first album came out with the XX when I was just turned 18. No, I had just turned 20, sorry. We started making it when I was 18. And basically the full of my 20s was all basically everything to do with the XX and touring and travelling, and it was incredible. And I didn't really stop very much. And, I think we've always been very much like, if we're going on tour, we're like committing fully to it. And the tours can sometimes be like, our first album tour, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had no expectations. And as things kind of grew, the tour ended up being like 2.5 years long. And then you're sort of like, you don't really know what normal life is anymore at that point. And I think just being a bit more like slow and at home and keeping things simple has been, I don't know, I think maybe it's the age I'm at as well. I'm really, really appreciating it at the moment. But then in the context, it also is like, I'm so grateful for those experiences I've had. And even if I can, even if I couldn't go anywhere ever again, I'm so grateful that I got to see parts of the world. And I was thinking about it before when I was a teenager, I developed a fear of flying. I had like a flight that was just really bumpy, and I just got really scared. And I think I could have been that kind of person that was like, oh, do you know what? I'm just someone that's afraid of flying, so I'm not going to travel really. I'll make it work within my kind of fear parameters. And because of the XX and opportunities we had, and being in a band, and my bandmates being like, no, come on, let's go, let's do it. I managed to face those fears and get like as far as Australia and all these things. And I'm just so grateful for having something I loved so much, I was like, no, I'm going to push through that and be able to still. And now the places I've seen, I never would have done that if it wasn't for the XX. So
that experience is kind of, like almost like forced you to confront some of those things. Like your life could have been really different if it wasn't for that. It's, I guess, is what you're saying. Like, it's that experience has forced you to do that, but then like the benefit, the sort of longer term benefit, maybe it didn't feel like that right at the beginning, has probably had huge impacts in terms of the places you've seen, the experiences you've had, shaping your personality, which is in turn has probably gone into your art now in terms of the music you make. So
absolutely.
It's maybe difficult at the time, but the long-term gain was there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think about that a lot, like just in terms of, there's a sort of duality, I guess, between like, I love making music and I'm kind of more of like a quiet person off stage. And then I think it took quite a lot of like to like build up go past nerves and stuff to get to the point where I can be on stage and perform in front of people. And I think, again, I could have easily been like, oh, like, I'm not a performer, like, that's just not me. Or I don't like flying. I'm just going to, I'll just be this one side of my personality is kind of quite low key. And it's kind of, the more time I spend off stage, the more I sort of forget that I actually like can be on stage and do that stuff. It's just, it's like quite an other side of my personality. And so, yeah, it's funny, like, since my girlfriend and I have been together for 2 years. We were together 10 years ago, at the very beginning of, well, over 10 years ago, before the XX sort of did all this touring. And so she's never seen me play live, apart from in a small pub 11 years ago. So it's quite funny because like when I'm with her, she's like, like, she's seen videos and stuff. She's like, it's crazy that you do that. But she's not used to me doing that. And I'm sort of not used to myself doing that with her there. So it's kind of this other side of it's kind of accentuated by the fact of our relationship as well. It's kind of a funny thing.
And has it given you the stuff that we just talked about there in terms of how you've confronted some of those things that could have become fears and prohibitors, things that might have stopped you do things? Have you sort of developed a sort of reflex of like having the courage? So say, for example, when you approach starting to create some of this solo music that you've been sharing, I imagine, was there a reluctance there? And did you sort of was the other side of your brain sort of saying to you, you know what, I've been in situations that I think that I was a bit nervous about before, but it was all okay. So you know what I mean? Yeah. I think this is going to be all right. Was that
totally. I think there is that kind of, there's those two sides. One side going, oh, it's a bit nerve-wracking. The other side just being like, just go for it. Like, just take the risk. And then there's always been this kind of push and pull where I've like actually really liked the feeling of being scared and kind of thrived off of that kind of fear and the pressure. And I think under pressure, like, I don't know, there's something that I've kind of pushed past that, and then actually something really like good has come from it. So there is kind of a push and pull going on inside me. But I would say with making solo music, I wasn't like, it took me a little while to come to it, even though it was quite obvious that I was writing a lot of songs for myself. I was not the last to know, but I wasn't the first to know that I was like making a solo album. It was I think it was a confidence thing. I really love being in the XX, and I've I haven't had this burning sort of secret desire to be a solo artist like all of my life. It's more like I just was craving some new like writing experiences outside of the XX. So in between our second and third albums, I did quite a bit of pop songwriting for other people. I asked to be put in sessions and collaborate with new people. And people kept thinking, oh, are we writing songs for the XX? And I was like, well, no, I feel quite passionate that me, Oliver and Jamie have only ever written the songs for the XX. And that's something I'm really like, I take it, it's special to me that. But so I had to be like, oh no, this isn't for the XX, but I want to learn about writing, and I want to learn, how pop music is made and how these big pop hits are like, what I just was curious. So once we kind of got over the hurdle that it was like, no, this isn't a song for the XX, which people were, I think, maybe hoping for when I was in the sessions, I was like, well, who can we write for somebody else? And in writing for, potential other people, I ended up realizing it was quite freeing, because I was thinking, oh, I'm not going to sing this song. But obviously the things that I was writing about were kind of still personal, because I wasn't just picking things from thin air. They were coming from somewhere. And then I'd play people some of the songs, and they'd be like, well, are you sure you want to give that song away? Because that's like clearly like about this thing I know you've gone through. And I was like, no, I'm giving it away. I don't, what else, I'm not going to give it with the XX because someone else has worked on it, and I'm not releasing a solo album. And after a while, I built up a few of these songs, and I slowly kind of came around to it, being like, actually, I think I've got something I'd like to say. And I started working with a producer called Fred Gibson, and we just developed a friendship, and he was just very encouraging and playful with the songwriting, and I really liked being around him. And one day we met up, and he said, "Who should we write for? What should we do?" And I said, "Maybe me." And it was and he was like, "Yeah, of course." And it was as sort of as simple as that. And then we wrote this song, which kind of started the whole journey of making a solo album. But it was kind of, even though it sounds kind of straightforward that I would just ask to write for me, it was actually took me quite a long time to get to that place.
And needed somebody else's kind of realization, or a few other people's realization to just sort of like prod you and be like, hey, maybe this one's actually not for somebody else.
Yeah, so. Totally. And once I sort of got in that mindset, I sort of just relaxed a bit more, and then could just enjoy it and just be a bit more playful with it, which has been the biggest joy of making this solo music. Before
we talk a bit more about Lifetime and the other solo material you've been working on, just that point you mentioned there, you deliberately went out and wanted to go and work with other collaborators and other artists to write songs, and it ended up being people like Dua Lipa and Mark Ronson, and you had a track on the Jenny Beth record that was out recently.
Yeah.
So what were your big takeaways from that experience of going out and writing music for other people?
I mean, I loved that experience. It was a kind of a year and a half of traveling around and kind of being parts of other people's worlds in a way. Jenny Beth is a really close friend of mine, and we spent a lot of time hanging out when we were on the same festival tours and things like that. And when she was saying to me that she was making a solo album, I was, because we're close friends, I was like listening to things and giving her my thoughts and feedback, and as you would. And then she asked if we'd like to write together, and that was a really intimate experience, because we were writing literally together in the room, very much like discussing so many thoughts. Like, she's like so clever and sees things from such an interesting place, and she really like challenged me, and like we talked a lot, and I really loved that. So that was a very that's one side of the kind of collaborative experience with other people. For a song like the Electricity, which is with Dua Lipa and Mark Ronson, that's another very different process, where I got to know Mark from he's somebody that I had met over the years, but not very closely. But I was asked to do a songwriting session with King Princess, who again has now become a friend, who I think is an incredible artist, and like she's I'm really excited for her with everything she's doing. I met her before she'd released any music, and I found her to be a really inspiring person. About like, she's just very, very confident in her sexuality. She's very open about it. She's like, she's so young, and she's just really not afraid to be who she is, and I really took so much from that. And she is on Mark Ronson's label, and I did a session with her and him. And when we were working together, it was just, I was really interested in and I was, again, it was more intimate working with King Princess, sort of like one-on-one. And then Mark messaged me and said, "Oh, I've actually need some help with some lyrics. I like the way you work," or whatever. And I was very flattered, and I said, "Yeah, let's. I'd love to like try something." But then he played me a track that it was an instrumental track that he'd made with a vocal melody over it. That was by Diana Gordon, who's an amazing artist herself. But the melody was just wordless, so it was like just a stream of consciousness melody. And I found it really inspiring. And he said, would you write the words for this? So this is kind of like a patchwork quilt of a song, essentially, because I'm coming in to sort of give it meaning, I guess, give it the story. And that was quite new for me, to be that late on in the process, just to inject that part of it. I actually really loved the challenge. So, I really studied exactly what the vocal melody sounded like, kind of picking up on the phonetics of what she was subconsciously saying. And at one point I was like, oh, it sounds like she's saying electricity. And, then that kind of sparked this story, which I put into it. I sang the demo, and then, I was like, again, in this place where I was like, well, this is not something I would sing myself. And so Mark went and to find someone to sing it. And, it's amazing that Dua said yes. And so she then sang it, and then, added it and developed it into her own way and like made some changes, and has then gone on to breathe so much life into the song. And it was just amazing to see the journey it went on, because then you see her do this amazing pop performance at like an award show. She has like a music video where she's dancing in it, all of these things, and I was like, wow, she's taken this song to a place I never could have taken. And I just loved watching the journey, and she's made it so amazing for what it, made it into something so special. And then it wasn't until afterwards that I met Dua Lipa. So then we were both happened to be in LA at the same time, and I sent her a message saying, hi, we've never actually met. Like, I saw you in LA, like, do you want to have a drink? And she was like, of course. So we met and we had a really nice chat about the song. It was great to meet her. But the context of this story is just like, it's so different to, say, working with Jenny Beth or King Princess, where I was there at the beginning of the song and I watched it grow. This was like, I met the person that ended up singing the song after it was already out. And then we could talk about it, and that was just like a whole other side of it. And it's just very, very different. Each song and each different collaboration and things I've worked on, they're different scales, but I've noticed that the bigger pop stuff, and this is something I got told by people in the industry, is like, well, you're not going to be in a room necessarily with a big pop star. You present them with a track. And, I was like, for me, I totally get if that's the way it works. But I would say that there's something very special about being able to be a part of the songwriting process with the person that's going to sing the song. And if I get the opportunity to do that with someone, I would really rather that, because I want it to be personal to them. And if I can help them like get the words out and be a part of that is like a really special thing.
It must have been such a thrill seeing that song with Dua Lipa kind of go stratospheric, maybe a little bit surreal as well, perhaps. But I mean, you described two quite different experiences of songwriting there. Are they both ones that you'll want to pursue in future, or it sounds like you have a slight preference for being kind of there at the very sort of nucleus of the song, like being there at the beginning, which doesn't, like you say, it doesn't always happen when you're writing for big pop artists.
Yeah.
So are you going to continue to do a bit of both? Are you going to continue to do one over the other?
I'd love to do both. I mean, there's something quite sort of instantaneous about getting sent a vocal melody, writing some words, sending it off again, and then that being that's it, you're done. It's very fast, and it's actually like quite an amazing feeling. And I really love, it's like having that very specific role within the process, because I'm used to being part of every single part of it, from the initial songwriting to the production to the arrangement and the mixing and the promotion of it and everything. And then I was literally like, wow, I just worked on the lyrics and watched it grow, and that was really interesting. But for me, songwriting is my biggest passion. So I just think it depends on the person as well. Like, there are some people that work really well, one-on-one and like opening up and stuff, and there are some people that it's not really what they want. So you just got to adapt, I think, to what the situation is.
Over a decade of writing songs with the XX and obviously other people that we've just been talking about, what is the difference what is the difference when coming to write a song that has your own name on it?
I put a lot of pressure on myself, I think, to I don't know. I've tried to just have a bit more fun lately with the songs I'm writing, and it's been quite different for me writing by myself or a full story, because with Oliver from the XX, I'm so used to sharing a song, in the sense that the way that we've always used, we initially started working is Oliver might have a verse or a chorus idea, which he would then send over to me. We used to work separately. We used to work over iChat, went in like 2008 or 9.
That feels super retro now.
Yeah. It was that time. It just we were off MSN Messenger. We were on iChat, and it was like MySpace iChat sort of time. That's we were. Although
I miss those days.
Yeah, no, yeah. We were. We've been best friends since we were 3 years old, but we still were quite shy about writing together in the same room. We would sort of collage things over sending messages to each other on iChat, and would build, if Oliver had a verse idea, he would send it to me, send like a clip of the voice memo or like whatever. Then I would react to that, not asking him, what is this exactly about for you? I would just read the lyrics, kind of think about, this kind of connects with something I've been through. Then I would write based off what he'd said about my experience, collage that back. Does it flow? Does it match? Then we'd kind of work out maybe a chorus together. And in doing that collage, this song that sounded like a very intimate song between two people, but it was actually from two very separate experiences formed into one song. And that's the way that we've kind of been. And so I was used to writing half a song, you know, and sharing it with him and bouncing off him and kind of, you know, collaborating in that way. And then so for me writing solo music, it's like, okay, and I'm going to write the beginning, the middle and the end of this story within the song. And that was kind of, and I've, you know, spoken to Oliver about that, and it's like kind of a new challenge to say, can I finish this song myself? and like, you know, give it the full meaning. And I've enjoyed that. It's been like good to have the space to do that, and a new challenge. And I've enjoyed in the songs that will come just being more personal and more open about my sexuality, singing about like I love her rather than in the XX. We've always kept it, you know, intentionally very universal. We used you, I, we, they, and never he or she. And I think that was, you know, that was partly as well feeling a bit more shy about being so open about my sexuality when I was younger. You know, I think now just being older and being more comfortable in my own skin and you know, things have progressed in the world and I just feel like more happy. I don't know if it's just like getting older and caring a bit less, but just to include that in my songwriting for myself. And
have Jamie and Oliver been encouraging along this process of writing your own solo material? Have they been on hand to sort of the sounding boards and there with sort of encouragement and advice? Oh, totally, yeah. No, they've been amazing, and it's like, it's very much like when Jamie made his solo album, it was very much the same thing. Like, it's an extension of him that I saw him. It was great to watch him like fly off and explore that. And I feel like they, you know, Oliver and I were very encouraging of him doing that, and I can really feel that same thing from Oliver and Jamie with me, which I'm so grateful for. And you know, Jamie worked on some additional production and arrangement of Lifetime. He was very much the sounding board for me with everything. With Oliver, I, you know, was always playing him things and talking to him about it, and it was great. You know, he's like, I sent him the version just before it got mixed. He's like, oh, I really missed that vocal take you did before where you really sang it out on the bridge, you know. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to put it back in. And you know, these little details. And what's, you know, it's nice. It's like Jamie was saying, it's just like, this song sounds so you, like in a nice way. Like I've got like this taste of music which is quite like pop dance, a bit like playful, and it's nice to be able to show a bit more of that in Lifetime and in what's to come. And I want to ask a little bit about your love of DJing and club music and dance music. Am I right in thinking you went to Ibiza for the first time last year? Yes. And how did you find the experience? Was it what you were expecting, or was it something different? I loved it. I went twice last summer. I went once for Oliver's birthday, which was amazing. Me and Oliver and Jamie and our friends went to Pasha for the first time, which was a real, which was amazing. You know, I think the iconography and like the graphics and everything of Pasha, I love it. And I was really excited to go, and we went to Dixon's night, and it was great. And like the music was, you know, it was really cool. And I realised that Dixon doing a night there was one of the more like tasteful nights that Pasha was doing at the time. But like I'm all for like quite brash pop dance music anyway. But it was amazing. I loved it. And then I went back a few months later in August for my birthday. It was both of our 30ths that year, so I think we were both kind of wanting to do something fun, and I loved it so much, so I decided to go back. And I went back to Pasha and I saw John Talabot, and it was Dixon's night again. I saw Roisin Murphy play there, and wow. Dixon play. It was amazing. So that, you know, there was a great lineup that Dixon was putting on. And then I went a few days later and I saw Calvin Harris play there, and I think that was Pasha in its full. What I was maybe more expecting from Pasha. Yeah. And it was like different crowd, but it was great to see it in its different versions, and you know, it was still like actually so much fun, and it's just a very different, very, very different sort of set. And I can sort of appreciate both nights for what they are. It sort of feels like two sides of my like tastes, really. It's like I can really appreciate, you know, the beautiful, like the way that the night progressed of the programming that Dixon had, and like the, you know, the subtleties within things. And then there's like the Calvin Harris night where it's like, it's not about subtlety.
It's kind of the opposite, but within the songs that he plays, it's a lot about there is a song. It's not like a instrumental like club night. It's like people are singing along. It's a song. They know the words. They're feeling the emotions of it. And there is something, whether it's maybe more brash than I would ever go, there is something I do love about that too. And I had a lot of fun in Ibiza, but it's, I think I'm interested in the dream of what Ibiza was, what I thought it was when I was like 12, and watching kind of music videos of like club classics. And I don't know, I have this fantasy of Ibiza, but I don't know if, I don't think it's been that, or it has ever been that. It's this kind of collage of things that you kind of project on it from being young and thinking about this place, and, reading and like seeing clips of like raving there, and like, I don't know. I have all of the graphics and all of the sort of visuals of that. It's something I've really become quite fascinated with.
Yeah. I wonder what it's going to look like when it all comes back, having basically got like a lost year. Like what Ibiza and that scene will look like in 2021 if it can come back, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It seems like such a strange time for clubland as well as everything else.
No, it really does. I really hope that places can survive. I hope that, speaking to friends of mine that are DJs that are just feeling a little bit despondent, that have tried to do the they've done some social distance parties and things, and they want to keep keep things going, but it's I know some people are feeling a little bit edgy about it. So I'm really hopeful that we can all go back to Ibiza and keep the dream alive next year, and fingers crossed. But yeah, I long for those days, like just of like being like sweaty in a club with people and not feeling like you need to step away. It's like something that I hope we can all get back to.
Definitely. I went to Ibiza. I've been a couple of times, but I sort of want to go back at this age now, because when I first went, I was 18, and I really didn't. I think the experience was wasted on me. I went and I just, or wasted is the kind of probably the operative word, but it just didn't. I don't appreciate for what it was. And I went a few years later, and then I think I realised, you have to go different places to seek out the music that you really love. And I think now, more than a decade on from that, I think if I went, I'd go with a much clearer idea of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. I was there. I was the one sort of knee deep at the foam party doing that experience.
Yeah.
And, catching a sort of freshers flu after 2 days, and sort of just, almost like the Kevin and Perry go large, or in-betweeners or something. I totally ruined my Ibiza experience. But yeah, I'd love to go back one time. I think it would be, I would get much more out of the experience now.
Totally. I think there's so many different sides to it as well. Like, I spent a lot of time out away from the clubs and like just in the nature of it, and I went to Pikes, and Jamie had told me a lot about how much he loved Pikes, and it was great to go there. And
I went to Pikes. Isn't it fascinating?
It's incredible.
You walk through the gates. For anybody that doesn't know it, it's a sort of legendary hotel in Ibiza where George Michael stayed, and lots of other people, particularly in the sort of 80s and 90s. And it was very famous for place in Ibiza to visit, and now it's still quite legendary now. Lots of people go there and stay there, and there are great parties and things like that, but the place has a vibe.
It definitely does.
We met Tony Pike before he passed away.
Oh wow.
And he was propped up at the bar with a drink, and my wife and I stood there chatting to him for hours, because he was this quite sort of legendary figure who just wanted to tell stories. And so you'd be stood at the bar, and he was basically, he'll tell the story to whoever's there having a drink with him, basically. But I'll never forget it. It was quite an experience.
Well, that's amazing. That's the dream experience, to actually have Tony Pike right there telling you everything.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the DJing aspect of it, you started out DJing really young. Was your first job actually being a DJ in a bar in Soho?
Yeah, yes. Technically, I think it was. So yeah, that was kind of something I never really mentioned before, like in terms of like the XX, and it sort of felt like it's just a separate part of my kind of introduction to music. And it was just, I started going out in Soho when I was about 16. I'd grown up in London, and I could get to Soho on a night bus, and luckily I could get into, like, in Soho there's a few gay clubs that were like places that I really wanted to get into, and I managed to get in, and it became like a real sort of community of, like, every Thursday I would go there and I would see the same people, even if I was a bit shy to talk to them. And then I ended up meeting one of my best friends there. We're still best friends, and the whole, like, I really, something that I'm just so grateful for now, that sense of community. And I would go all the time, and I don't really know how it came about. We were doing the XX at this time, but playing in small bars and pubs, and it was definitely wasn't, I would say, going amazingly well. It was just something we were doing. So I don't think that this DJ set would have been related to anything with the XX. I think it was simply because I went a lot, and this guy that worked there was like, "Do you want to DJ?" I said, "Well, I don't DJ." He's like, "No, yeah, you can. You can always come. I think you'd be good." So he was like, "Okay, just burn some CDs. You fade it in, you fade it out. You're fine." And I was like, "Right, okay." So I really, I was like, I really wanted to do it. So I went home. I burnt all this music on CDs. I'd been sort of in the corner, sort of observing anyway for like months, about like watching the kind of arc of it and how people would, react to a song as soon, if you put it on and people knew it. And so I just like burnt a lot of the songs that I loved, and I knew the moment you put it on, people would instantaneously just hands in the air, "Oh, I love this song." And that's kind of what I've been drawn to anyway. But when I couldn't, literally had the technique of fading in and out, these songs that are quite bold and recognizable were actually a great tool. And that's just something I really loved. And so I was playing that, like pop dance music, hits, like club classics, 80s music, like disco. And then at the same time, starting with the XX, making music that was a lot more sort of subdued and like just kind of not as kind of bold, I would say, as what I would play out. And that was just a different side of my tastes, I guess. I remember when the XX was started to get some more opportunities, I was asked to do a DJ set after a gig. And I remember I played what I had been playing, and someone came up to me afterwards and they were like, "Is this really what you like? I can't believe that you make this music and this is what you're DJing." And they were like really confused and a bit like offended. And I was a bit like, "Oh," and it kind of was a bit, I was really young and I was a bit like, I don't know, it just kind of stayed with me. And I still have done more DJing and stuff, but they just felt like two different things at the time. And what's been quite nice is that now, 10 years on or whatever, the music I'm making for myself is very much in line with the music I was playing back then. I've just kind of been on a journey, I guess.
Yeah, kind of come full circle.
It does feel like that, yeah. Which there's something I actually kind of love about it, the fact that I've come full circle. But yeah, it's funny when I think about those moments back then.
We talked about your love of songwriting, obviously, and club music, and a bit about Ibiza, but one thing I wanted to ask you about was about football, because I know that you play football as well, and you were in the campaign to launch the England football kit not that long ago. Are you still playing as well? Because you play for Whippets FC, which is
that's right,
like a local team?
Yeah, so football's in the past few years, since being on the last tour for the XX, I came back from touring and I was feeling a little bit like I'd been away for about 18 months, and I was like, okay, what's life like in London? What's my routine? Who are my friends? And then some of my best friends were like, okay, we've started a women's five-a-side football team. You're in it. No, like, come on, let's do it. Every week we're going to go. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. We'd all been watching the World Cup that summer and got really into it. And I'd been into football a lot when I was a kid, but had sort of moved away from it as I'd been like in my 20s. But yeah, so we started this team. We're part of a women's league in Hackney called Super 5 League. It's amazing. It's really grown over the past few years. And so I've ended up meeting so many amazing girls from this team, and kind of finding what I was sort of seeking, is that sense of community again. London can be quite lonely, and to meet friends, I think, as you get a bit older, can be a bit weird. You got your friends from when you were younger in school and stuff, but I think, I've just really enjoyed the meeting people again, and also it being like nothing to do with music. Like nobody really cares on my team or on the pitch like what I do. It's more like, they're like, "Oh, you defended really well today," and I'm like, great, okay, that's it, And so I really loved that, and for me then to get a request to be in a night campaign to launch the England kit, I was like, I got that request and was like, "You're joking? Like what?" Let
me think about that.
I was like, it was just incredibly surreal, and like just really cool, and like a meeting of worlds, And it was nice to be there on the shoot as like this is Romy from Whippets FC. I was not like, this is not Romy from the XX, you know, and that was quite a cool thing in itself, and made me proud of our team, and that it made an impact in that way. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. You know, it was a really, really cool group of people that were a part of it, and I got to meet. Yeah, it was great to meet them, and you know, a weird moment to be able to go into the Nike shop and just like see myself there and like be part of this launch. And yeah, I think football now has become, you know, now we've just got told that it's all kind of we you know, play in this league. It's been cancelled, and obviously, but you know, getting to play a little bit in between these two lockdowns has meant a lot to me, and watching football is quite an escape for me as well. Like I am quite like a football fan. Like I watch games and I watch the interviews, and I just kind of like, I find it quite entertaining. And also the women's World Cup last year was just an amazing progression in women's football, and just felt like so inspiring, and just made me really excited for women's football. Like, and hopefully pushing that on, because there is still like a big gap in that. But you know, feel like things are changing, and that feels important and exciting.
I actually really missed football when it was away during the lockdown, and I've really appreciated. It's been great to see people like Marcus Rashford and Raheem Sterling, and obviously like Megan Rapinoe, and these players over the last few years have made quite considerable like social change, haven't they?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's I think football, in that sense, has played quite an important role in a lot of the big changes that we're seeing, and
Totally.
Yeah, I've been really encouraged by that.
I love that. I feel like they have such a platform to make some changes, and like I think Megan Rapinoe, like it's just so inspiring, and I loved exactly Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling. They're just doing such good things. I really like a player called Hector Bellerin as well, who's got a podcast that I've been listening to.
Has he? I've not listened to that. I need to do that.
Yeah, it's great actually. He's vegan, and he he believes in, like, you know, he's very eco-conscious, and he has like started an incentive to plant trees when Arsenal win matches, and you know, he's like he talks to a range of people about like mental health and like racism and veganism and like stuff that you don't really. I just like that he's got like a voice and wants to talk to people about more than just football. It's called More Than, actually. So I've been telling people about that podcast, but I don't know, it feels like they have got such a big platform and people really look up to them. And like in a very different way to, I think, to musicians, football is just huge. They have a lot of power, and I think my dream is like that. I hope that we can get to a place like Megan Rapinoe being so open about her sexuality is just so important and amazing. And if in in men's football, if there can be a bit more openness about like sexuality, like that would be a dream of mine. But who knows if that's, you know.
I feel like I mean, we've been saying it for a while, when it's kind of like it's only a matter of time. But I hope it happens soon, because it does feel like in the last 18 months, maybe a little bit longer, that the footballers have felt able to be a bit more open, and maybe just, you know, I mean, I know they take a lot of, Raheem Sterling in particular took so much horrendous criticism when he's spoken out about racism in football, but it's important. Like they make it, like his voice and their voices collectively are the ones that happen to make progress. So
Totally.
I hope that does happen soon.
Totally.
Final thing I was going to ask you was just about 2020, like, and just what you've been listening to and what you'll take away from it, because I think because it's been such a memorable and strange and possibly difficult year, that the sort of music I've been listening to has left quite a sort of indelible mark, as in I will always remember that this was the music that I loved in 2020. And those records have been big, euphoric pop records. I love the Dua Lipa album this year. I really like the Lady Gaga album from this year.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I was going to say that one,
So good. I mean, and the way it opens with that incredible string section. If there are any releases from this year that you will think that in, I don't know, 5 years' time, when things look a bit different, that you'll be like, that's the album, that's the track, that's the artist that reminded me of 2020?
I mean, it's funny that you say Lady Gaga, because I would say that particular album, Chromatica, coming out in the middle of lockdown, was a real like pleasure to have, a bit of a gift, because, you know, I've noticed that I've just gravitated to music that kind of makes me feel, you know, it's a sense of escapism, within the sense that it's like things have been pretty heavy, and like, you know, I've been pretty glued to the news, and as everyone has, and to just have some like pop like dance music that is just really euphoric and uplifting, and I can just turn off all the lights and just dance in my kitchen, is actually the thing that I've really, really craved. And I don't know, I just reached a point, I think, where I was like, I'm just so like stressed and like freaked out by everything. I was like, I think I just need to dance, even if it's just me and my girlfriend in the kitchen with the dog. Like that felt like a release, and so I think I'll always remember that Gaga album for that. And I wouldn't even say a specific track, it's like the whole thing has been with me as a journey. But I really like the song Alice. I think it's just like a really good it's just a really solid song. Oliver's favourite one is Replay.
Okay.
And he called me and he was like, Romy, you need to make music like this. It needs to be like this. And I was like, I loved that. And I was like, I'll do my best. But, I think that's, for me, with Lifetime, the song that I put out, I made that that was made in lockdown, in a time when I was in my room, very still, craving the pace of the outside world and connection and the euphoria of clubbing and everything, and having none of it. And I guess I just tried to create that for myself when I was missing it. And my dream was, it will come out and we'll all be able to be together and like hear it in a club. And that wasn't really the case. And, I was a bit worried. I was like, is it insensitive to put out this music at this time? I was just overthinking it maybe. And the biggest compliment I got was from people sending me messages and saying to me in person, like, I really needed to hear that song. It just cheered me up. It made me feel like the energy of it just really brightened my day or whatever. And that was beautiful to me, because that's all I was trying to do, just for myself as well. And so if people can get that from that, I'm super glad.
Yeah. Well, here's to dancing in our kitchens with our partners and our pets for the next month of lockdown. Yeah. It's what's going to get us through.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, good night.